My name's Harold Pierce, 54 years old. For 30 years, I've built machines that don't fail. Bridges, cranes, systems that keep steel plants alive when men like me have gone home for the night. I co-founded Pierce and Hansen Engineering out of a rented garage in Pittsburgh. Back then, it was just me, a drafting table, and a coffee pot that never shut off. My partner, Mark Hansen, handled the business side. I handled everything that required a wrench, a blueprint, or a brain that didn't quit. We built something solid. Contracts with the state, union workers with steady paychecks, a small reputation that still meant something in this town. When my knees started to go and my hands began to shake from the years of vibration, I told Mark maybe it was time to slow down. He laughed and said, "You've earned that, partner. Let me steer for a while." For the first time in decades, I believed him. Life settled into a rhythm. Coffee before sunrise, tinkering with model engines in my garage, phone calls from old clients who still asked for my advice. The noise of business faded into the hum of retirement. Or so I thought. A few months ago, Mark started dropping by more often. Expensive suit, same easy grin. He'd bring single malt scotch, talk about market timing and liquidity events. The kind of words that never belonged in a shop built on grease and grit. "Harold," he said one evening, pouring himself a drink, "we could cash out big. Retire early. Some buyers from Chicago are interested. Serious numbers. Think about it. No more payroll, no more deadlines. Just comfort." I smiled politely. "I've had enough comfort to last me." He chuckled, tapped his glass against mine. "You always were sentimental. That's why you need me." When he left, the office smelled like his cologne and the faint sting of scotch I didn't drink. Something about that night gnawed at me, the way he patted my shoulder like he'd already closed a deal. 3 days later, a courier dropped an envelope at my door. Thick paper, corporate seal, my name typed clean at the top. Inside was a contract transferring majority ownership of Pierce and Hansen Engineering, complete with a signature that looked exactly like mine. The contract was 10 pages long, printed on thick paper that smelled like toner and arrogance. Transfer of ownership, 80% stake of Pierce and Hansen Engineering to Mark Hansen, managing partner. At the bottom, my signature, my name, my handwriting, or close enough to fool a stranger. But not me. I'd signed my name on more blueprints, paychecks, and project specs than I could count. My P had a double curl, my H always leaned right. The one on this page was lazy, flat, mechanical, a counterfeit hand trying too hard to imitate certainty. I read every line twice, pulse steady but cold. It was notarized, filed, and dated the night Mark brought over that bottle of scotch. I didn't even taste the whiskey, but apparently my pen had. By morning I was at the office, the same glass building I'd helped design, now carrying his name first on the door. The receptionist looked nervous when she buzzed me in. "Mr. Hansen's expecting you." He was. Mark sat behind my old desk, tie loose, posture relaxed, the contract folder open beside his coffee. "Harold," he said, voice too casual. "You look upset." I dropped the contract on the desk so hard the pen holder rattled. "You forged my name." He didn't even blink. "That's a serious accusation." "It's a serious crime," he chuckled softly. "You've always been the craftsman, not the paperwork guy. Maybe you forgot signing. Maybe you were tired. We toasted that night, remember? You said something about trusting me to handle things." "Trust you to run the company," I snapped, "not sell it out from under me." He leaned back, smile tightening. "The board believes me, Harold. They've already approved the transition. Paperwork's clean, filings are done. The Chicago buyers wire the money next week. You'll get a courtesy payout, enough to keep the lights on in that pretty little garage of yours. I stared at him. Years of friendship, of sweat and late nights, all packed into that smug grin. You think I built this company just so you could sell my name like scrap metal? He shrugged. The world moves fast. You slowed down. Somebody had to keep up. I stepped closer, the air between us thick enough to taste. You think because you wrote me off, I'll just disappear? Mark smiled, smooth and condescending. You're not in the picture anymore, partner. Time to let the future handle itself. I gathered the contract, folded it slow, and slid it into my coat. My voice dropped to a whisper that still cut through the silence. This is just the beginning. By Monday morning, the rumor mill was already churning. Someone said I'd signed the sale under duress. Someone else said I'd had a breakdown. And by the time I walked into the glass conference room at Pierce and Hansen Engineering, every eye in that place had already chosen a side. Mark was at the head of the table, sleeves rolled up, voice warm and measured. Harold, he said, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. Join us. We were just going over the transition plan. I didn't sit. I laid the contract on the table, sliding it toward the board members. That's not my signature, I said. You all know it. You've seen 1,000 of my initials on engineering drafts. This one isn't mine. The room went quiet. A few of the younger executives exchanged glances. Mark gave a soft chuckle, the kind designed to sound sympathetic. Harold, no one's questioning your contribution here. You built the bones of this company, but things have changed. You said yourself, retirement, less stress. I said I wanted time, I corrected. Not betrayal. He leaned forward, voice still smooth but edged now. You've been under a lot of medication since your accident, haven't you? Maybe you just forgot. We had drinks. You even toasted to new beginnings. That's not true. Mark spread his hands. Then how do you explain your name on a notarized file? The secretary saw you sign. The notary stamped it. Are you calling them all liars? One of the board members, a woman from finance, frowned. Mr. Pierce, the documents do appear valid. I looked straight at her. Ma'am, I can show you 50 contracts with my real signature. Compare them yourself. This one was traced. Mark's smile didn't falter, but his eyes narrowed. It's sad, really, watching someone who built so much start doubting his own memory. A murmur ran through the room. Doubt, whispered pity. I slammed my hand on the table. Don't you dare talk about my memory. I remember every bolt, every beam, every man who bled building this company, including me. What I don't remember is selling my life's work to a liar. The silence that followed felt like steel cooling, hot, then cold, then hard. Mark leaned back, his grin small and poisonous. Careful, Harold. The more you fight this, the more unstable you look. I met his gaze, my voice low and even. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just the only one here who still remembers what the truth looks like. He smirked, eyes gleaming with mock pity. Or maybe, Harold, you don't remember what you signed. My hand tightened around the folder. Then I'll remind you with proof. By the end of that week, my name became something people whispered instead of spoke. At the cafeteria, conversations stopped when I walked in. In the elevator, employees avoided eye contact, their phones suddenly fascinating. Someone had started a rumor that I was showing early signs, that I'd been mixing medication, that I'd forgotten meetings, and every story, every whisper, had the same quiet source. Mark Hansen. He didn't come at me directly anymore. He didn't have to. He weaponized pity. He let the silence do the killing. I went to the production floor one morning out of habit, coffee in hand. The new security guard stopped me halfway through the gate. "Sorry, Mr. Pierce," he said, shifting awkwardly. "You're no longer cleared for access. Mr. Hansen's orders." I stared at him for a long moment, then turned back toward the parking lot. The sound of machinery hummed behind me, the same machines I'd designed, running without the man who built them. When I got home, the mailbox held a single envelope. Notice of termination effective immediately. The signature at the bottom? Mark Hansen. For the first time in years, I sat at my kitchen table and didn't know what to do with my hands. I'd spent decades building things that lasted. Steel, concrete, systems that didn't break under pressure. But I hadn't prepared for betrayal that came on letterhead. By nightfall, the phone started ringing. Friends from the industry, old clients. They spoke in polite tones that hid discomfort. "Harold, I heard you're taking a step back. Early retirement, huh?" Translation: "We heard you lost it." I almost stopped answering, until one call changed everything. "Mr. Pierce?" The voice was soft, uncertain. "It's Lydia Tran. You probably don't remember me. I was in financial operations under you before the reorg." I remembered. Quiet girl, sharp eyes. Never said much, but when she did, it mattered. "I heard what they're saying," she continued, voice tightening. "It's not true, and I think I can prove it." I sat up straighter. "Go on." "There's an internal audit file Mark forgot to erase. It's time-stamped the night your signature was used. Shows metadata from his laptop. If we can pull that, we'll have something." For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to oxygen in my lungs. "Lydia," I said slowly, "you realize what you're risking?" She didn't hesitate. "You taught me to back up the truth before it gets deleted." She paused, then added quietly, "Meet me after hours tomorrow. I'll bring a copy." The next morning, I drove to the office anyway. Habit dies slower than pride. The front desk had a new receptionist. She smiled like she'd been trained for funerals. "Mr. Pierce, I'm so sorry, but your employee credentials are no longer active. I can't—" "I'm not here for a badge," I said quietly. "Just need to check my records." She hesitated, then buzzed security before I could blink. 2 guards walked me to the IT room, as if I were a trespasser in a place that still smelled like my sweat. The system login rejected my password 3 times before the screen flashed, "Access revoked." I opened the shared drive, empty. The archives, blank. Every engineering schematic I'd signed, every payroll slip, every message between me and Mark, gone. Deleted, renamed, erased like I'd never existed. One of the guards shifted uneasily. "Orders from upstairs, sir. They said your files were part of an internal cleanup." Cleanup. That was what they called it when someone buried a man alive in paperwork. When I stepped outside, the winter wind cut hard through my jacket. On the glass door, the company logo gleamed under the gray sky. Hansen Engineering Group. My name was gone. Back home, I sat in the dark kitchen, coffee gone cold. The ticking of the wall clock, the only sound left in a house built on routine. For the first time in years, I didn't know who I was without the work, without the name on that door. I looked around, blueprints stacked in the corner, Margaret's photo still on the counter, her handwriting scrawled on the back. "Don't forget what you're made of." I laughed, bitter and low. "I remember, honey. I just don't know if it matters anymore." The phone buzzed once, unknown number. I almost ignored it, until the text appeared. From Lydia T. He's covering tracks faster than I can copy them, but I got one file, you'll want to hear it yourself. Attached was a single audio file titled meeting-night.mp3. I hit play. Mark's voice filled the kitchen, calm and smug. Once the ink dries, Harold's done. He'll cry about betrayal, maybe talk about legal rights, but without proof, he's just another old man shouting at a locked door. My hand clenched around the mug until it cracked. I replayed his voice, colder each time, then whispered to the empty room, "You built that locked door, Mark. I'm about to kick it open." By the time Lydia showed up, the sky had gone the color of steel. She stood on my porch in a wool coat, laptop bag slung over one shoulder, eyes sharp but wary. "I couldn't stay long," she said, stepping inside. "He started locking down more files, but I pulled enough to prove he used his own credentials the night your name was forged." She set the laptop on my kitchen table. The glow from the screen cut across the dark room as she opened a folder labeled AUSUCH_logs. Lines of timestamps, IP addresses, and usernames filled the page. "There," she said, pointing. 11:48 p.m., 3 months ago. He accessed your personnel folder, transferred ownership rights, then renamed the master directory under Hansen Group. I leaned closer, jaw tightening. He didn't even bother hiding it. "Oh, he did," she said. "He deleted the record an hour later. But the Mirror server kept an automatic backup. He forgot the redundancy you insisted on when you built the system." For the first time in weeks, I smiled. A real one, sharp at the edges. Guess paranoia finally paid off. She looked at me, half grinning. "So what now?" I stood, straightening my shoulders, the stiffness in my back turning into something solid again. Purpose. "Now we fight him where he lives, on paper. You said you found the logs. We backed them up, notarized them, and traced them to his machine." Lydia nodded. "I can get the metadata certified by an outside IT firm. They'll timestamp it, make it court admissible." "Good. And we'll need more. Emails, internal memos, anything that shows intent." She hesitated. "That'll take time." "I've got nothing but time." I poured 2 coffees, slid one across the table to her, and flipped open Margaret's old leather ledger, the one I'd used to track payroll back in the garage days. "Let's make this simple," I said, drawing 3 lines across the page. "Step 1. Retrieve original partnership deed from the state registrar. Step 2. Gather digital proof of forgery, logs, emails, signatures. Step 3. Find someone who can make the law listen." Lydia raised a brow. "Someone like who?" I looked up at her, a half smile creeping in. "You ever heard of a man named Agent Miller? Used to work white-collar cases. I helped him once, loaned him engineering blueprints that cracked a fraud scheme. He owes me." She blinked. "FBI?" "The same. And if there's one thing he loves more than justice," I said, snapping the ledger shut, "it's payback." The house fell quiet again, the kind of quiet that comes before something shifts. I looked down at Mark's printed signature still sitting on the table and felt the anger settle, not burning anymore, but steady, precise. "He built lies on paper," I said softly. "I'll burn him with ink." Lydia slid a flash drive toward me. "Then let's start the fire." We sat at my kitchen table like 2 conspirators in an old war movie. Coffee, a ledger, a laptop with its battery on red. Lydia spread printouts across the wood. Auth_logs, a list of IP addresses, and a single line highlighted in yellow. Mark's machine at 11:48 p.m. "Here's the play," I said, "because plans are blueprints for action, and I used to draw those for a living. We do this clean. No theatrics until the court can't ignore the evidence." Lydia tapped a pen against the margin. Step 1 is obvious. Paper. You need the original partnership agreement, the notarized deed, whatever's in the state registrar. If Mark sold 80%, there'll be a filing somewhere with a transfer history. We need the certified copy, stamped, sealed, unquestionable. State registrar tomorrow, I said. I'll drive down myself if it's what it takes. Step 2, Lydia went on, is digital proof. I've already mirrored what I could from the server, but we need certified metadata, an independent firm to verify timestamps, IP traces, and that the signature file originated from his terminal. That makes the log court admissible. I know a guy, I said. A retired IT auditor from the plant. He owes me a favor for a schematic I lent him years ago. I could feel the old machine minder in me waking up, finding the right gear for the right job. Step 3 is bait, Lydia said, and her voice dipped, precise. Mark can't help himself. He bragged to someone, right? We stage a fake buyer, an email trail that promises a last tranche if he confirms the forged documents. He'll respond. He'll say things. He'll reveal more. We record the replies. We make him incriminate himself. A slow smile crept over my face. Make him prove intent on his own keyboard. I like it. Step 4, she added, eyes steady, is law. We don't go public. We don't let the rumor mill turn our facts into hearsay. We take sealed evidence to someone who can act, federal level. You said you had a contact? I told her about Agent Miller, how I'd once handed him a set of blueprint revisions that exposed a procurement kickback scheme. Miller had been the kind of man who kept a ledger of favors in his head. He repaid with teeth. If anyone can bridge tech proof to a real investigation, it's him. Lydia nodded, folding her hands. Good. State records, certified metadata, bait for more admission, and a federal agent to execute warrants. That's airtight if we don't screw it up. We worked out logistics. I'd get the registrar copy the next morning and notarize everything on the spot. Lydia would contact the auditor and run the mirrored logs through a forensics process. Checksum, hash, the whole forensic candy store. She'd prepare the bait email from a faux investor address, carefully worded to lure bragging replies without tipping our hand. I'd make sure Mark had motive, leave small hints around the office that an acquisition was imminent so his hubris would push him into the trap. We also need witnesses, Lydia said. Someone who can place Mark at the terminal that night. The guard, the night admin, people leave traces, swipe logs, keycard entries. We round them up and notarize statements. And PR? I asked. If he smells trouble, he'll go loud. He'll call shareholders, spin it into a smear campaign about my instability. We can't let that happen. We don't deal with PR yet, she said. We build the record. Then we let law do the talking. I wrote it out in Margaret's ledger. 3 neat columns labeled paper, digital, law. Each item got a date and a name. There's a comfort in lists. It's how I built bridges and how I'd rebuild my name. She looked up, softer for a moment. You realize what you're asking people to risk? The auditor, the night admin. If Mark gets wind, he could bury them. I'm not asking them to risk what I wouldn't, I said. This company survives because of the work we did, not because one man decided to sell us out. If they're honest, they'll stand by the truth. Lydia pushed a business card toward me. I'll call Agent Miller, quietly. I'll give him the logs and the registrar's request once you have it. If he's the man you say he is, he'll move without fanfare. That night, I slept with the ledger on my chest, the way I used to cover blueprints when a storm rolled in. Plans are nothing without momentum. The next morning, Lydia's phone lit up before mine. She listened. Then her eyes went wide in that way that used to mean good trouble. "Harold," she said, voice low and steady. "It's Miller. He wants to meet. Says he remembers both your blueprints and your favor. He said—" She stopped, searching my face for reaction. "What did he say?" I asked. Lydia smiled, a quick, fierce thing. He said, "Tell me everything from the start, Harold. This time we make it stick." I folded the ledger closed, feeling the weight of paper and the lightness of a plan finally moving. "Then let's tell him the story he deserves to hear." The registrar's office smelled like dust and toner, same scent as every place that decides who owns what. I waited while the clerk disappeared into the archive stacks, tapping my thumb against the counter like I used to against drafting tables. She came back carrying a thick brown folder sealed with a red tag. "Original partnership deed, Pierce and Hansen Engineering, filed 1998. Certified copies are $15 each." I slid a 20 across the counter. "Keep the change. Just make it official." The clerk stamped it certified true copy and slid it under the glass. There it was. My handwriting, my pen pressure, my date. No amendments, no transfer record. Proof that my 50% share never moved an inch. I tucked the folder into my briefcase, careful like it was nitroglycerin. Outside, wind whipped across the courthouse steps, cold and clean. For the first time in months, my name felt heavy again, in the right way. Lydia met me at a diner near the river. She looked exhausted, but wired. "He took the bait," she said, sliding a flash drive across the booth. "What's on it?" "An internal email chain. Mark forwarded the forged contract to the buyers last week and wrote, 'Make sure the old man's signature matches the one from December. Use the clean copy, not the draft.' I copied it before he deleted it. I stared at the little piece of metal between us. One flash drive, one contract, two signatures, the first cracks in his empire of paper. Before I could speak, a shadow fell over the booth. "You two always plan revolutions in diners?" Agent Miller. Same salt and iron voice I remembered from the plant case years ago. Suit a little rumpled, eyes too sharp to belong to a bureaucrat. He sat down without asking, flipping open a small notebook. "You've got documentation, timestamps, and witness potential. That's enough to start building probable cause." I handed him the registrar folder. "Stamped an hour ago." He whistled softly. "Clean copy, red seal. That's proof #1 right there." Lydia added, "And this," she pushed the flash drive toward him, "is his email admission. Server metadata's intact." Miller nodded, tucking both into an evidence pouch. "You realize once I file for a preliminary warrant, he'll know. You ready for that, Harold?" I met his gaze. He erased my name from the company sign. "I'm done hiding." He smiled faintly. "Good. Then let's start turning this from personal revenge into federal procedure." We spent 2 hours going through timelines, when Mark accessed the servers, which devices he used, who notarized the fake contract. Miller's questions came like bullets. Lydia and I fired back with receipts. When we finished, he closed the notebook. "You've done your homework. Now we need to tighten the net. Financial records, IP traces, witness statements. Once those line up, the warrant writes itself." I leaned back, feeling the kind of tired that doesn't ache. It steadies. "He built a paper fortress, Agent. You sure you can bring it down?" Miller smiled. "Paper burns easy, Harold, especially when it's forged." Outside, dusk settled over the river. I watched the reflection of city lights ripple on the water, thinking how truth works the same way. Distorted for a while, but it always resurfaces. Lydia's phone buzzed. She read the message, eyes widening. "It's from Mark," she said. He just scheduled a closing dinner with the Chicago buyers. Tomorrow night. I finished my coffee, voice low. Then tomorrow, we close something else. The restaurant was the kind of place people used to impress themselves. Dark wood, quiet jazz, waiters who never made eye contact. I arrived early, wearing the same suit I'd worn to the company's first state contract signing 20 years ago. Still fit fine. Still mine. At 7 o'clock sharp, Mark strutted in with the Chicago buyers, 3 men in tailored suits and smug grins. He shook their hands like a game show host about to hand out prizes. "Harold," he said, too loudly, too friendly. "Glad you came. Maybe now we can keep things civil." I stood slowly. I didn't come for civility. I came for closure. He smirked. Always the dramatic one. "Gentlemen, this is my former partner. He's here as a courtesy, I suppose." One of the buyers chuckled. "We were just reviewing the final paperwork. Everything looks solid." I set my briefcase on the table and opened it. "Then you'll want to see this." Inside, the certified deed gleamed under the chandelier's light, the red seal bright as blood. "Original partnership document," I said evenly. "Filed with the state registrar. No transfer, no amendment. Meaning this sale isn't legal. Meaning your signatures mean nothing." Mark's grin faltered. "Harold, sit down. You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" I leaned forward, voice steady. "No, Mark. I'm reminding you that you can't erase a man's name by printing a new logo." One of the Chicago men frowned. "Is this true? We were told he'd signed over his share." Mark's face tightened. "Of course it's true. He just doesn't remember. We notarized it." "Then maybe the notary should answer for the timestamp," I cut in, sliding a document across the table. "Because this shows your system credentials logged into my file at 11:48 p.m. the night you claim I signed." Lydia had prepped the printout in clean, bold font, the proof that couldn't be waved away. Mark's jaw tightened. "That doesn't prove anything. Could have been anyone on the network." "Really?" I said, flipping open another folder. "Then maybe the board will enjoy hearing your own words." I pressed play on a small recorder. Mark's voice came out loud and clear. "Make sure the old man's signature matches the one from December. Use the clean copy, not the draft." The buyers froze. One of them muttered a curse. Another pushed his chair back. Mark lunged forward, slamming the recorder off. "You're violating confidentiality agreements, Harold." I straightened my jacket. "So were you." The restaurant had gone silent. Only the soft clink of a waiter freezing mid-pour. Mark's face had gone pale, sweat at his temple. "You don't know what you've done," he hissed. "You just cost both of us everything." I smiled, slow and measured. "Not both of us." From behind the wine cabinet, a voice cut through the tension. "Actually, Mr. Hansen, he just saved himself." Agent Miller stepped out of the shadows, flashing his badge. The buyers stepped back instinctively. Mark's lips parted, color draining from his face. "What the hell is this?" Miller's tone was calm but final. "This is called evidence, Mark. You've been living on borrowed credibility. Time's up." Mark tried to rise, but Miller's hand pressed him gently back into his chair. "You might want to sit down for this next part." Mark's voice cracked first. "You're all making a mistake," he said, trying to steady his breathing. "He's manipulating this. I have proof." He pulled his phone from his jacket, thumb shaking as he tapped. "I'll show you exactly what happened. He did sign. I recorded it myself." A minute later, the restaurant's projector came to life. On the screen, a grainy video played. Me, sitting at my old office desk, pen in hand, scrawling my name across a document. Mark's voice on the recording said cheerfully, "Congratulations, partner. We're moving forward." The buyers leaned forward, murmuring. One of them whispered, "That looks legitimate." Mark turned to me, triumph creeping back into his grin. "You see, memory plays tricks, Harold. You wanted the sale. You just can't admit it now." I said nothing. I didn't have to. Lydia stepped up beside me, opening her laptop. "Play that again," she said to the waiter controlling the screen. Mark frowned. "What are you— Just play it," she repeated, eyes never leaving the footage. It played again. Halfway through, Lydia hit pause. "There," she said, pointing at the timestamp in the corner. "See that?" The buyers squinted. "That video metadata shows June 14th, 2021. The file name and compression type match the one used in Mark Hansen's personal device backups. It's a fragment from a maintenance contract signing 3 years ago, digitally altered. He used deep editing software to overlay new dialogue." Mark's face went still. "That's ridiculous," Agent Miller cut him off. "It's not ridiculous when the FBI lab confirms it. The same video hash appeared in a case I handled 2 years back. A scam investor deal using identical edits." He stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Mark and I could hear. "Funny coincidence, huh?" One of the buyers slammed his chair back, glaring at Mark. "You faked legal footage?" Mark stood abruptly, his practiced calm breaking. "No, I was trying to simplify. Harold's confused. He doesn't understand how mergers—" "Sit down," Miller ordered, voice sharp as a command post. The buyers were done listening. One of them snapped, "We're pulling out. This deal's poison." Mark turned to me, face pale, desperate. "You can't do this, Harold. You'll ruin both of us, the company, the employees, everything we built." I met his stare evenly. "You did that the second you traded trust for profit." He pointed at me, voice rising. "You think this ends here? You think the board won't back me?" Miller crossed his arms. "They won't need to. Once the federal complaint hits the docket, the board will scramble to save themselves. You'll be the only name left on the charge sheet." The sound that came from Mark wasn't a word. It was a strangled breath, half fury, half fear. His empire had just lost its walls, brick by forged brick. He slumped into the chair, muttering, "You can't prove intent." Lydia closed her laptop with a click. "Already did. The email you sent to the buyers used your device ID, your office Wi-Fi, and your personal encryption key. You left your fingerprints in every pixel." Mark went still, eyes hollow. Miller leaned in close, voice low and final. "We're not done, Mark. There's still one more file we haven't shown them yet, the one from your bank." Miller slid a small flash drive across the white linen table. "You remember telling the bank you had power of attorney, Mark?" Mark's head jerked up. "What are you talking about?" Miller nodded toward one of the Chicago buyers, who still hadn't left his seat. "These gentlemen weren't the only ones you tried to sell a story to." He gestured toward the waiter, who quietly plugged the drive into the projector system. The speakers hummed, and then a voice filled the restaurant, the clear, polished tone of a corporate bank manager. "This call is recorded for compliance. Please confirm your name." Mark's own voice followed, steady and confident. "Mark Hansen, managing partner at Hansen Engineering Group. And you're authorized to move the funds from the Pierce and Hansen joint business account?" "Yes. My partner, Harold Pierce, granted me full signing rights. You'll see the digital copy, uploaded under his credentials." The banker paused. "We'll need verbal confirmation that Mr. Pierce agreed to the transfer." There was a faint laugh. Mark's laugh. "He's practically retired. doesn't even check the accounts anymore." The clip ended. The room didn't move. Even the music had died somewhere in the background. Mark's lips parted like he might speak, but no sound came. Miller clicked a remote, and the next file appeared on screen. A digital transaction slip with an IP trace on the footer line, 192.168.1147. Hanson Office Admin PC. Miller pointed at it with one gloved hand. "That's your office machine. The signature key belongs to your personal encrypted USB. I have the forensic report to match it. You logged in, authorized the transfer, and rerouted $2.6 million through a private account in your name. That's fraud, forgery, and wire manipulation, all under federal statute." Mark slumped back into the chair, face drained of color. You can't use that recording without a warrant." "Oh, we can," Miller said evenly. "The bank gave consent as part of their compliance cooperation. You gave consent the moment you confirmed the call was recorded." The buyers looked at each other, silent. Then one of them spoke quietly. "We're filing civil claims, immediately." Mark tried to stand, but Miller's hand pressed gently on his shoulder again. "Don't bother running. You left your trail in every file you touched. The rest of it's already been logged." He turned toward me. "Mr. Pierce, your shareholdings will be reinstated as soon as the court issues the seizure order. The company's safe again." I nodded, the weight in my chest finally loosening. "It's not just about the company," I said softly. "It's about the name." Mark's head dropped forward. Sweat darkened his collar. "You planned this," he whispered. "Both of you." I looked down at him, my voice calm. "No, Mark. You planned it. We just paid attention." Miller closed his notebook, eyes never leaving the man across the table. "That's proof number 2, and the last nail in your coffin." The sound of sirens echoed faintly outside the restaurant windows. Miller glanced at me, then toward the door. "You ready for the final part, Harold?" I nodded once. "Let's finish the job." The flashing lights outside painted the restaurant windows in red and blue. Every diner had gone silent, forks suspended in midair as the sirens grew louder, closer. 2 uniformed agents entered, their badges glinting under the low chandeliers. They walked straight past the stunned waiter and stopped at our table. "Mark Hanson," one of them said, "you're under arrest for fraud, wire manipulation, and falsifying federal business records. Please stand." Mark didn't move. He stared at me instead, like if he looked long enough, he could undo the last 10 minutes. "Harold," he said quietly, "you don't have to do this. We can settle. I'll return your shares. Hell, I'll walk away." I stood slowly, smoothing the front of my jacket. "You already walked away the night you forged my name." He pushed back his chair, desperate now. "Think about the company. The people, we built that together." I met his eyes. "Then you should have remembered that before you tried to sell it." The agents reached for his arms, cuffing him as he finally broke. Voice cracking, eyes darting from me to Miller to Lydia, searching for anyone who'd still believe him. But nobody did. As they led him toward the door, the restaurant buzzed with quiet disbelief. One of the Chicago buyers muttered, "Guess we backed the wrong partner." Miller handed me a single folder, the preliminary recovery order, already signed by a federal clerk. "Your assets are frozen under protection until full reinstatement," he said. "We'll walk you through the process tomorrow." I opened the folder, reading my name, Harold Pierce, 50% owner, printed clean and correct. For a moment, I just stood there, letting it sink in. Lydia touched my arm. "You did it," she whispered. I shook my head slowly. No, we did. You, Miller, the truth. It was a team effort, the kind this company was built on before greed rewired it. Across the room, Mark hesitated at the threshold as one of the agents guided him out. He looked over his shoulder, voice hoarse. You'll regret this. I took a step forward, voice calm and measured. You tried to sell my name, Mark. I paused, letting each word cut through the noise. Now you'll sign your own sentence. He lowered his head, and they led him into the waiting patrol car. The door swung shut, the sirens faded, the hum of conversation returned, thin and uncertain. Miller exhaled, closing his notebook. That's one hell of a closing deal, he muttered. I almost smiled. For once, the numbers finally add up. 2 months later, the sign on the building read the way it should have always read. Pierce Engineering, no ampersand, no stolen name, just mine. The employees came back one by one, mechanics, draftsmen, clerks. Most didn't say much when they saw me walking the floor again, but a few nodded, quiet and firm. That was enough. Lydia took over as CFO. She handled the rebuild with the same calm precision she'd shown the night everything fell apart. We'll keep it lean, transparent, she said. The kind of place that remembers who built it. Agent Miller stopped by once to hand me the final report. Case closed, conviction secured, assets recovered. Mark had pleaded guilty to avoid a trial. 2 years minimum, Miller said, lighting a cigarette by the loading dock. He'll have plenty of time to think about partnerships. I just nodded. Paper burns easy, huh? Miller grinned. Told you. That evening, I stood in the yard as the machines rumbled to life for the first test run under the restored name. Sparks flew, steel hissed, the air smelled like oil and second chances. I looked up at the sign, Pierce Engineering gleaming against the Pittsburgh sky, and for the first time in a long while, I felt whole. Margaret would have liked it this way, clean, quiet, honest. I went back inside, picked up the old ledger from my desk, and wrote one final line under the last entry. Balance restored. Then I closed it for good. If you've listened this far, thank you. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories Men U55 America, because stories like mine deserve to be heard.